Welcome back to Myths and Mayhem, Episode 6, Perseus and the world's most dangerous scavenger hunt. Last time, we spent the entire episode talking about monsters. Typhon, the Hydra, Cerberus, the Minotaur, Scylla, Charybdis. Basically, a complete list of places you absolutely would never want to vacation. And at the end of the episode, we talked about Medusa, the most famous of all of the monsters. Snake hair, turns people to stone, generally terrible for making eye contact. Today, we're going to talk about the hero who decided, yeah, I can take her. That guy was Perseus. And now, if you've never heard the full story before, let me save you some time. It's not a story about a hero wanting to make a name for himself. This is a story that starts with a prophecy and a teenage boy who accidentally volunteered for the worst mission in Greek mythology. Let's dive in. So this story starts not even with Perseus. This starts with his grandfather, and his name was King Acrisius of Argos. Now, if you've watched this series for more than 5 minutes, you've probably noticed something. Nothing good ever starts with a prophecy. Nothing. But that's where we start our story. Now, King Acrisius had a problem. It wasn't a money problem. It wasn't a kingdom problem. It wasn't a power problem. He had all of those things. He only had one concern. His only concern was that he didn't have a male son. He had a daughter, Danae. And so he went to the oracle to figure out what would happen. And the oracle gave him his future in one sentence. She said that his grandson would be the cause of his death. When he learns this, King Acrisius could do one of a couple of different things. 1, accept his fate. 2, live a better life. Become a better person. Maybe spend some more time with your family. You know, normal things. Instead, he chooses option D, none of the above, and it immediately ignores all of these. Instead, he decides no grandson, no prophecy. And since his daughter, Danae, doesn't have any kids yet, he decides to lock her up inside a bronze tower. Problem solved, or at least he thinks, because lest we forget, this is Greek mythology, and Zeus exists. And whenever Zeus notices a beautiful woman, things are about to become complicated. Very complicated. Now, the myths say that Zeus transforms into a shower of golden light and enters Danae's chamber, which raises approximately 900 questions. Questions that the Greeks clearly were not interested in answering. The important part is that 9 months later, Danae has a son, Perseus, and somewhere in the distance, Destiny starts laughing. Because here's the thing, Acrisius spent all this time and effort trying to prevent the prophecy and somehow managed to create the exact conditions needed for it to happen, which is basically the entire Greek mythology experience. You can almost imagine fate sitting there watching this unfold. Acrisius locks Danae in the tower. Check, still happening. Zeus shows up. Check, check, definitely happening. Perseus is born. Yep, the prophecy right on schedule. And now, eventually, Acrisius discovers Perseus exists, and he immediately panics, which is fair. The prophecy is literally sitting right in front of him. But the problem is that Perseus is Zeus's son, and killing the child of the king of the gods sounds like a fantastic way to become a lightning rod. So Acrisius decides on another terrible plan. He places Danae and baby Perseus in a wooden chest and throws them into the ocean. And you know what? I want everybody to appreciate how often in Greek mythology, people seem to think that this will solve problems. It doesn't solve problems. It creates sequels. I imagine Poseidon has to be looking up from the sea and saying, seriously, again? This happened 3 weeks ago. The chest floats across the ocean. Nothing happens to it. Waves crash, storms roll in, and somehow they survive. Because this is a hero story, and if they didn't, this would be a really short episode. Eventually, the chest washes ashore on the island of Seriphos, where a fisherman named Dictys discovers them. Now, Dictys is important for one reason. He's nice. Genuinely nice. He's a good guy. No secret agenda, no prophecy, no betrayal, no monster transformation, just a good person, which honestly makes him one of the rarest characters that we have encountered so far. We've met gods, titans, heroes, kings, monsters, and the fisherman is somehow winning the morality contest. Years passed. Perseus grows into a young man, strong, athletic, brave, and completely unaware that mythology is about to ruin his week, because that's how our hero story works. You get one peaceful chapter, and then somebody with a crown shows up and ruins your life. Enter Dictys's brother, the king of Seriphos, named Polydex. Now, Polydex wants to marry Danae. There's just one problem. Danae, she ain't interested, and Perseus is extremely protective of his mother, which means that every time Polydex tries something, Perseus is there, standing in the way, being inconvenient. Perseus is the bouncer blocking Polydex from entering into the club. Now, a reasonable king might move on, but Polydex, he's not a reasonable king. Instead, he decides Perseus has to go, preferably forever. And this leads us to one of the greatest trap questions in mythology. Now, one day, Polydex hosts a feast. Everyone brings gifts, horses, jewels, treasures, expensive things. Meanwhile, he doesn't tell Perseus that this is a gift-bringing party. So Perseus, being young and being naive and being horrible at financial planning, didn't bring a gift. Polydex asks, if you could bring me any gift in the world, what would it be? Now, everybody watching this episode can tell that this is a trap. The audience knows, the gods know, the furniture probably knows. Only Perseus doesn't know. Perseus replies with the most arrogant answer he could have possibly given. I will bring you the head of Medusa. The room immediately goes silent. You can hear a pin drop, because this is an insane answer. He could have said a horse, a boat, a fancy sword, a fruit basket, anything. Instead, he chooses the single most dangerous item in existence. This is the mythology equivalent of somebody asking what you would do this weekend and responding, I'll wrestle a volcano. Polydex just sits there and he probably is trying not to smile. He is trying not to laugh his butt off, but Perseus is trying to look confident. Everyone else is wondering if they had just witnessed somebody write their own obituary. The king immediately says, that's what I want. Bring me the head of Medusa. And just like that, Perseus has volunteered to hunt Medusa. The monster who turns people to stone, the monster that countless heroes have already failed to defeat, the monster whose front yard is literally decorated with statues of previous adventurers. And somehow, this seems like the beginning of a good idea. The only saving grace is that at this point, the gods decide to get involved, which is fortunate because at this moment, his plan appears to only be entirely confident. And confidence can only get you so far when your opponent can kill you with eye contact. So let's take a moment to review. Perseus has volunteered to retrieve the head of Medusa, a monster whose face can literally kill people. His current equipment consists of a sword and outrageous amounts of confidence, and what appears to be an absolutely no backup plan. Needless to say, this is not ideal. Fortunately for Perseus, someone upstairs is paying attention. And for once, it's not Zeus, it's Athena. Now, Athena has a reputation. She's the goddess of wisdom, strategy, planning, preparation. Basically everything that most heroes forget to bring with them when they're going into a fight. And Athena looks at Perseus and sees potential, which is fortunate because at the moment, Perseus has the survival odds of somebody challenging a tornado to a fist fight. One thing you'll notice throughout Greek mythology is that Athena rarely helps idiots. Impulsive people, maybe. Reckless people, occasionally. Heroes with potential, absolutely. Athena wasn't alone though. Hermes also shows up to help. And Hermes is one of my favorite gods because everyone else in Greek mythology tends to be dramatic. Hermes just seems to be happy to be involved. He's just happy to be there. Need a message delivered? Hermes. Need directions? Hermes. Need a magical equipment? Apparently, that's a Hermes job too. Need somebody to cause enough chaos to keep things interesting? Definitely Hermes. You can almost imagine Athena looking at Perseus. Athena, do you have a plan? Perseus, sort of. Athena, that was a yes or no question. Now moving on. There's one important issue. Nobody knows where Medusa is. And before anyone points it out, yes, this probably should have been the first thing that Perseus figured out. Just remember, he volunteered first and then thought later. People think Medusa is Perseus's biggest problem. She's not. The biggest problem is information, in which he has none. You can't fight a monster if you don't know where the monster is. That's just wandering around with extra confidence. Athena and Hermes point Perseus toward three ancient sisters known as the Gree. And this is where the story starts getting weird, even by Greek mythology standards. Now the Gree, they are ancient, older than most of the gods, older than most monsters, older than probably everyone. They are older than dirt. They are older than your grandma. They are ancient, and they possess the knowledge nobody else has. Fortunately, they also possess one eye. Not one eye individually, one eye total. They share the one eye for eternity. Before we continue the story, I need you to understand and appreciate how weird this situation is. How many of you have tried to share one phone with three siblings where you have one pair of glasses between the three of you to watch it? It doesn't work. It's my turn. No, you had it earlier today. No, you had it yesterday. On and on and on. It is a constant argument. It is a constant battle. Now this is the time when Perseus walks up on them. They're exchanging the eye between them, and Perseus pulls a great yoinkening out of the air, and he gets the eye, and it is gross, it is slimy, it's disgusting. He doesn't want it, he wants to give it back to him, and they want to give it back, but he needs that information. And so just imagine this conversation happening. Give back the eye. No. Now. I need information. Give us the eye. No. And on and on. We're now negotiating for this eye because they want the eye and he wants the information. Finally, they give him the information to get the eye back, and he knows where Medusa is. Now, I love this part of the story because nobody is threatened. Nobody is hurt. This is pure negotiation. It's simple, effective, maybe a little unethical, but it works. Perseus has the leverage that he needs to get the information that he needed. Now, Perseus returns the eye and finally knows where Medusa can be found. The problem is, knowing where Medusa lives is not the same as surviving the visit. Now that Perseus has the directions, the gods decide it's time to give him equipment. And this is where the quest starts feeling less like a mythology and more like somebody visiting the merchant in Resident Evil, Namtook in Animal Crossing, or Beetle in Legends of Zelda. Perseus gets winged sandals given by Hermes. Now Perseus can fly, which immediately improves because walking toward Medusa seems like a terrible strategy. Now, can we talk about how unfair flying sandals are? Every other hero that we're going to meet is going to be climbing mountains, crossing oceans, fighting monsters on foot. Perseus unlocks air travel. Not fair. Second thing he gets is Hades' helm of darkness, the invisibility helmet, which sounds pretty useful because it is. Imagine being invisible, flying, and carrying divine weapons. At this point, Perseus is basically becoming mythology's version of a stealth character, a magical bag specifically designed to carry Medusa's head, which raises several questions. Most importantly, who made the bag? We're not given the information. And why did they anticipate this exact situation? And lastly, Athena's shield. And this is an important one, because it's a polished bronze shield, reflective enough to act as a mirror. Because if Perseus looks directly at Medusa, it's game over. Athena is basically giving him the final instructions. Don't look directly at her. Yeah, obviously. I'm not joking. Neither am I. At this point, Athena is probably thinking whether or not she should ride on the shield. The entire mission comes down to this one simple rule: don't look at Medusa. Which sounds easy until you remember that humans are incredibly talented at doing the exact thing that they're told not to do. Eventually, Perseus reaches the land of the Gorgons and immediately realizes that this is much worse than he had ever imagined. Everywhere he looks are statues, warriors, adventurers, hunters, heroes, some holding weapons, some frozen mid-run, some frozen mid-scream. Here's the terrifying part. None of these started as statues. Every single one of these statues started as people and thought that they were going to be the very hero that he was trying to be. Every single one of them believed that they had a plan, and now they're decorations. That's got to be unsettling. And for the first time since volunteering, Perseus probably realized how serious this mission actually is, because these statues aren't warnings, they're evidence. Evidence that everyone else failed. Eventually, Perseus finds the Gorgons, sleeping, silent, dangerous. 3 monstrous sisters resting among the ruins, and somewhere among them, Medusa, the monster he came to find, the monster he's about to face, and the monster who has no idea that tonight is going to be a very bad night. Now imagine being Perseus for a second. You've flown halfway across the known world. You've stolen an eyeball. You've collected all of these magical artifacts, walked through what is essentially the world's deadliest sculpture garden, and now you're standing 20 feet from a creature who can kill you by accident. No pressure. Perseus keeps his eyes fixed on Athena's shield, not Medusa, the reflection. Every step has to be perfect. Too slow, she wakes up. Too fast, he makes noise and they wake up. One wrong glance and suddenly he's the newest lawn ornament in the garden. This is the point of the action movie where every hero suddenly develops perfect stealth skills. You know what I'm talking about. The guy who spent the entire movie crashing through doors suddenly becomes a ninja. That's Perseus right now. Finally, Perseus reaches Medusa. He raises the sword, takes a deep breath. He raises the sword, takes a breath, and swings. One strike. That's all he gets. The blade finds its mark. And just like that, the most famous monster in Greek mythology loses her head. Somewhere on Olympus, Athena is watching and lets out a shriek of joy and says, finally. And now, if you thought the story was over, you haven't been paying attention. Greek mythology never misses an opportunity to get stranger. According to the myths, when Medusa dies, 2 beings emerge from her. One is a giant golden warrior named Chrysaor, and the second is Pegasus, the winged horse. Yes, the winged horse, the most famous horse in history, that one, Pegasus. And apparently, they've been inside Medusa the entire time. Unfortunately, the celebration is short-lived because Medusa's sisters wake up. They just had a whole bunch of hullabaloo coming forth out of Medusa at the same time. And they look at the situation. They're not happy. They just realize that their sister was killed. Perseus grabs the head, throws it into the magical bag, and activates the invisibility helmet and immediately gets out of there. Because for once in Greek mythology, somebody understands when it's time to run. This might actually be the smartest decision ever made by a hero so far. Not to fight, not to grandstand, not to deliver a speech, just leave. Now, most stories would end here. Quest complete, done. Hero wins, done. Roll the credits. Greek mythology says absolutely not. Not for Perseus. As Perseus is flying home, he goes over the kingdom of Ethiopia, and there he sees something strange. A woman chained to a rock, and around her an enormous crowd. Never a good sign. This woman is Princess Andromeda, and she's about to be sacrificed to a sea monster because her mother offended Poseidon, which is another thing you should never do, ever. Now, Andromeda's mother is Queen Cassiopeia, and she had bragged that she was more beautiful than the sea nymphs. And Poseidon, he heard about it, and so he sent this sea monster to terrorize Ethiopia, and it would go day after day and would terrorize the people in the city, to the point where the king went to the oracle and asked what needed to be done to save his people. And the oracle said, you need to sacrifice Andromeda to the sea monster, because it's never the person who did the offense, it's always somebody else who has to get blamed for it in Greek mythology. So Andromeda is chained to a rock, and Perseus sees this. He goes in to investigate and learns all of this very quickly. And he turns around and says, you know what? I got this. Because Greek heroes apparently collect dangerous situations like nerds collect vintage toys. Perseus looks at the sea monster. He looks at Andromeda. He looks at the severed head of Medusa and thinks, you know what? I got something for this. The sea monster raises up from the ocean, huge, terrifying, and exactly the sort of thing Poseidon would send. The crowd panics. Andromeda prepares for the worst. Perseus gets ready. Now, different versions tell this story differently. Some say that Perseus fought with a sword, and some say that he fought from the air, and some say that he used Medusa's head. Honestly, I like the last one because I think it's the funniest. Imagine the sea monster pops his head out of the water just like he's already done many times, thinking he's gonna get an easy lunch, and then all of a sudden he sees Medusa's head, and then he's a stone, and it's done. And we have the quickest defeat of a monster there's ever been. Regardless of the version, Perseus wins. The monster is defeated. Andromeda is saved. The kingdom celebrates, and Perseus, he gains a wife, which means that this side quest somehow ended in a marriage. Most people take a vacation and come back with souvenirs. Perseus leaves on a quest and comes back with a flying horse, a magical monster head, and a fiancée. Eventually, Perseus returns to Seriphos and discovers something infuriating. Polydex has spent his absence harassing Danae. Exactly what Perseus feared. Now remember Medusa's head. Turns out it's still useful. Perseus enters the king's hall. Polydex mocks him. Nobody believes he succeeded. After all, nobody defeats Medusa. Polydex is laughing. The court is laughing. I can just imagine the conversation. And I have returned with a gift, and everybody's laughing. And then Perseus pulls out the head, and then suddenly nobody's laughing, because Polydex and his supporters were instantly turned to stone. And honestly, it's one of the most satisfying moments in Greek mythology. The villain spends the entire story causing problems, then becomes furniture. Justice is rarely subtle in Greek mythology. Now remember, this isn't the end of the story, because we have one thing that has yet to be resolved. Perseus went on his quest, yes, but the story didn't start with Perseus. It started with a prophecy. And because Greek mythology never forgets a prophecy, word reaches Acrisius. Perseus is alive. He's successful. He's famous, and now fully capable of fulfilling the prophecy. So Acrisius does what every Greek mythology character does. He runs. It is amazing how often people hear prophecies and decide that jogging away from destiny is a viable strategy. Years later, Perseus attends an athletic games. One event involves throwing a discus. Everything is normal, everything is fine. And then fate decides to step in. Perseus throws the discus, and the wind catches it. The discus flies off course and strikes a spectator. That spectator was his grandfather. The man who's spent his entire life trying to avoid this exact moment. No monsters, no battles, just fate fulfilling the prophecy. And that's what makes Greek mythology fascinating. The prophecy comes true. Not because Perseus wanted it to, not because Acrisius deserved it, not because anybody planned it. It happens because destiny in Greek mythology is undefeated. Perseus completed an impossible request. He defeated Medusa. He escaped the Gorgons. He saved Andromeda. He defeated a sea monster. He toppled a king and accidentally fulfilled a prophecy. That's not bad for a teenager who originally volunteered because he was trying to impress people at a banquet. And maybe that's the lesson. The monsters aren't always the biggest challenge. Sometimes it's pride. Sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's fate. And in Greek mythology, fate always wins. Next time on Greek mythology, we're heading into the labyrinth, meeting a king with terrible ideas, a monster with a bull's head, and a hero carrying a ball of string that somehow becomes one of the most important items in mythology. That's right, we are finally meeting Theseus and the Minotaur, and trust me, things are about to get weird. And that's our tale for today. Thanks for joining me on another journey through Myths and Mayhem, where the heroes are reckless, the monsters are terrifying, and the gods constantly prove that unlimited power does not come with unlimited wisdom. And remember to like and subscribe if you are enjoying this content. Until next time, stay curious, stay legendary, and remember, in Greek mythology, whenever somebody says, "What's the worst that could happen?" the answer is usually an entire episode. See you next time.